It is nearly impossible today to find affordable housing in New York City. When necessary, we will take aggressive legal action to remove negligent owners and property managers. We will work to transfer ownership to responsible stewards. Stewards that include community land trusts, nonprofits, or even the tenants themselves.
Mamdani's family is one of the wealthiest families in Uganda.
Oh, this is
Okay. Okay.
The hypocrisy. But
I've seen, I've gone by their compound, all of that. I mean, they're, they're just, yeah. So, but
he is literally everything he claims to despise. But he's of that, but it is, so I think that class of people, that style, some of it is just comfort. And one of the things about all this stupid communism is it's always been from day one, going back to the French Revolution and the Jacobins, been the children of the wealthy that come in with cockamamie world destruction.
That's right.
The Bolsheviks, the Jacobins, the Red Guard in China.
That's right.
Pol Pot goes to France and sips coffee and reads Marx, and then he goes back and has killing fields. There's a wealth disease problem.
I think
isn't there?
There's definitely a wealth disease, but there I would separate two categories in there. For the longest time, I asked myself, because especially as I've been working my whole life on bringing prosperity to Africa, a few times I had to pause and ask myself, do I want all of it? Am I for all of it? Because it seems like this prosperity thing has a feature in it that seems to be about becoming complacent and navel gazing, and from there all types of craziness starts to happen.
Narcissistic,
right? Narcissism,
self-centered,
all of that. And I'm going to save the world, but the way I'm going to save the world is we're going to bring, we're going to fight inequality. So communism has to come back. We're all these stupid ideas. Yeah. And it's funny because that one, they like to say it's never been done right. So in a way, it's a license to always try to do it again, which is
It's never been done right. It's just the closer we get to it, the worse it gets. But there'll be a threshold where it goes from the gulags to utopia.
That's horrible.
But we get to the gulags first every time. But then we'll get to utopia after the gulags.
It's just horrible. So what I mean about the prosperity, a majority of the prosperity of people who become prosperous, their offsprings, what happens is they're the ones you're going to find all of a sudden questioning everything about themselves, including was I meant to have two arms? Literally, there are some clubs where they cut one arm because I don't think it was right for me to be born with two arms, whatever. But, when you start navel gazing, it goes all over the place. Right. There's no end.
It is the definition of mental illness.
It is.
To be focused on yourself is an obsessive compulsive mental disorder.
Exactly.
Who cares what you feel? Look outside. Go take a walk. Talk to somebody else.
Talk to somebody else. So that's what happens. So a majority of them, they just start doing things, and in a way, they're hurting themselves rather than the outside world. But then you have a smaller group. And usually these are the more educated ones. And
the heavily schooled.
So there's this entire class of people, usually elite class, who very well educated, supposedly. They're the ones who basically they have found that to be the voices and the guardians and the shepherds of the poor or the minorities or the people among us, who are not doing so well.
They're pets.
It is. I'm glad you're saying it because sometimes that's how I talk about it. But here I'm like,
that's how they all talk about it.
Today I'm like, my God, be civilized. But in a way, that's what it is. And so you become their pet.
Look at all my brown pets that I love.
Yeah, exactly. Right? So you
that's
have
how they act.
Exactly. And they now are the ones, their entire capital is that I care capital. And they're going to be your voice. They're going to be the ones who come up with ideas on your behalf, all of that. And what they have found is that it is highly lucrative. You don't have to work that hard. They get into these positions, whether it's head of an NGO or who knows what else.
You're getting billions from USAID for nonsense.
It's insane, and they invade our universities, being head of this, head of that, professors, whatever. Yeah. This is a whole different type of capital. It's the capital that's provided by the powerless among us.
I mean, you have this, the critical race theory types are shot through with this sort of character, like Ibram X. Kendi.
Oh.
Sort of like two-bit, second-rate, academic ends up with like $30 million at Brown University to run some anti-racism center, produces nothing.
Just closed with nothing to show for it. No, it's true. It's true. So I think this is what's going on. So prosperity has a yield. Hopefully, most people are going to be okay. But out of the people who are not okay, and out of the people who are not okay, you have two camps. The bigger one is the people who navel gaze and then they start doing all types of crazy. They are harms to themselves for the most part.
Yeah.
And then you have the other part, smaller, but much more dangerous, because they're not navel gazing. They're looking outwards, and they're involved in things that are really going to affect others. And when I say others, they're not affecting one or two or three. I mean, these people have caused problems. And in the US, the way I look at it, even, this whole issue around, if you have an issue around the rate of Black incarceration, and so people can say, okay, we need to work on
criminal justice reform,
which is great, right? We do that. But then where some people mess up with our work is, but at the same time, people should not be accountable for nothing. There is nothing wrong. When they kill somebody, it's their fault. It's not their fault. When they steal, it's not their fault. So you're not willing to do the hard work of a person having to work on themselves. All they want is to work on the externalities, and then everything else is not the person's fault. But we all know how that ends. And so, but this is all, these ideologies, all of that comes from those people who have decided that, we care about Blacks, and it's not right what's happening to them. That's great. But everything falls apart when they start talking to you about how pretty much anything goes, and you can't,
So you are a powerful force for a lot of things, for a lot of important ideas, and you're coming at it from a different perspective. You're an immigrant to this country. You are from Senegal. You have businesses. You have businesses here and in Senegal. And so you have a really unique perspective on a lot of the things that dominate the conversation today, especially with our kids. Things like, where does inequality come from?
Yeah.
Why do countries become rich or poor? Why did the white world get wealthy, and why didn't the Black world move alongside it? How should we think about colonialism and these sort of big things that get blamed for all the problems of the world? What is the answer to that argument? Because that argument persists. In fact, if anything, that argument among some people is gaining ground. The mayor of New York City today, he is from Africa, or
Uganda.
So he's an African.
Yeah.
His father is a Marxist anti-colonialist professor. Yeah. Why is he wrong?
Or his father is even worse. I mean, I'm going to be reading his book and writing a review on it, but the guy is pretty much he's trying to make the argument that Idi Amin was actually not that bad. But anyway, let me read the book, get back to you.
Yeah.
In any case, for the longest time, when I was still a commie, because believe it or not, at some point I was a communist, I used to think that it was because of racism. I used to think it was because of slavery that happened. I used to think it was because of the colonialism and all of that. It all made sense. On the surface and vibes-wise, it all made sense, especially when you don't get to hear the other side, or anytime they try to say anything, you just discount them quickly by,
you're a racist.
Yeah, you're racist. And of course, you're the one who stands to lose if anything changes. So why would I listen to you anyway? So I was basically baking in all of that, and I was just crazy. And I was convinced that this was all capitalism. That's why, and just basically buying into the Marxist ideologies.
So it's exploitation, right? At the center of it.
It's exploitation.
There is a certain amount of stuff.
Yeah.
If you over here have more, it is because you took it. And it's a zero-sum world.
Yes.
And that's the reality. It's not like you can create things. In fact, we don't really know where the things came from, so that they never have an explanation for how the wealth is there. It's like, well, the whole world's a lot wealthier than we were like 100 years ago. Yeah. How do you account for that? Yeah. Did we steal it from Mars? That's always the first thing with the Marxist story. It's like, but we're richer today than yesterday. Yeah. So where do we steal that from? Exactly.
But eventually, at some point, I had to really, connect the evidence and take colonialism, which is the biggest one. You take a look at it. Ethiopia has never been colonized. Yet for the longest time, it's been the poster child for poverty in Africa. Conversely, Botswana has been colonized. And for the longest time, Botswana has been one of the best performers on the continent. So I'm thinking to myself, this doesn't add up. And Vietnam, look at Vietnam, has been colonized, bombed twice by the French and the Americans. Those guys have been literally been poisoned, literally. And look at Vietnam today, coming back up, when it was worse off than most African nations back in the early 60s when we were getting our independences.
Yeah,
So,
I think I saw like South Korea was as poor as a median African country not that long ago.
No, back in,
And now it's basically like a super state of like high tech.
There you go. Singapore, British colony, today richer than its colonizer GDP per capita. Hello. So I'm thinking to myself, no, this colonialism thing, well, it sounded very comforting because it's always kind of comforting when it's somebody else's fault. And I think maybe even I kind of led onto that. And plus the books don't help us. History books don't help us. The way things are showed to us don't help us in terms of, So that was a first big one for me when I started to, wake myself up to these other things. And then you discover that Africa is the region in the world where it's the hardest to do business. That's a region in the world where entrepreneurs have the least economic freedom. This is when I started to look at things like the Doing Business Index ranking of the World Bank, at the Fraser Economic Freedom Index, and many other indexes like that basically measure how hard or easy it is to do business anywhere in the world. But the minute you say that, you think to yourself, wait a second, you're poor because you don't have money. You don't have money because you don't have a source of income. I'm talking about our population. Our populations are poor because they don't have a source of income. A source of income for us, for most people, is a job. Where do jobs come from? Businesses, the private sector. So basically, Africa is poor. Africa is the poorest region today, not because we're low IQ, we're lazy, colonialism, slavery, racism, you name it. It's because it's a place in the world where entrepreneurs, aka wealth creators, are not free to create wealth. Why? That was my next question.
Well, that is the interesting question, right? Because you have in this, so to pause for a minute. So you've got essentially like a continent that got swept up in big government, left-wing Marxism.
Yep.
I mean, Zimbabwe, you go through it and they're all Marxists.
That's why I told you it's a village when it comes to these issues.
Yeah, they were all Marxists. Like all of these African leaders, I'm like, well, why were they all Marxist? Like, why did they all go communism?
Exactly.
And top-down crazy control.
Yeah.
Like, because, and to some extent, like, and that itself is weird because Marx is some French salon, German,
racist,
disgusting, boil-covered jerk ideology.
Yep. He's the worst.
It's an export.
Yeah, he's despicable. No, I mean,
it's not. It's like the ultimate colonialism. It's Karl Marx.
That's right. That's right. You could not say it better. That's why I say, socialism, Marxism is colonialism. That's where. So I asked the same question to myself. Once I discovered that, first of all, I just fell to my knees because, like the way you fall to your knees for something has been wrong with you. You're not well physically or emotionally. And everywhere you go, they just they give you bogus reasons, or they say, take these vitamins, whatever, and it doesn't work. And it's not adding up. But what else do you know? But one day you stumble upon this reason, and that one makes sense and it checks out. And then you're just like, wow. Because having the proper diagnosis is halfway to the solution, right?
Yeah.
It's half of a solution.
Well put.
Yeah. And then that's been the problem with Africa. We have had the wrong diagnosis as to why this continent is still the poorest in the world. Everybody coming up with this stupid reason that I tell you about. It's just
trillions in foreign aid, crazy schemes from Bill Gates and Jeffrey Sachs.
But that's what happens when you believe that those reasons we brought up are the reason why we're poor. If you act on what you believe. And so that's what's been going on. But if you line up 100 people, like I said again, and you ask them, why is Africa the poorest region in the world? Not one of them will tell you it's because it's the most overregulated region in the world. Not one of them will. As long as that's the case, we have a problem. Because if you don't understand that's a problem, then you're not going to work on that. You're working on bringing me aid and all of that crap instead. So once I found that a huge sense of release came upon me, because now I'm like, okay, now we got at least half of this problem is solved. And it's solid. The evidence is solid.
Yeah.
Everywhere, in place and in time, where you run that software called free market capitalism, voila. And wherever you're stupid enough to walk away from it, Venezuela and other places, voila too. And it's not a matter of culture. You have people who arguably come from the same root.
Yeah. North Korea, South Korea.
West Germany, East Germany, back in the days. Same thing. They tried to play with different softwares. Well, the outcome matched.
But why did Africa become so communist?
Well, I'll tell you. So that's when, so at that point, by the way, I became very serious about economics. Now I'm discovering this whole other side of the argument, and all of these thinkers who have been thinking about this and measuring this stuff. And but evidence is so rock solid. Like I said, it's rock solid.
Hernando de Soto, William Easterly are two ones in particular for this issue in particular.
I love them. Yeah. And then in my case, I also was helped further by the work of someone like George Aite. He's a Ghanaian economist. I love George.
George is great. I was trying to remember his name because I met him a long time ago at the Oslo Freedom Forum.
Yeah.
And he's
amazing.
He was on point.
Amazing. Yeah. We lost him, but so George has been one of my intellectual fathers as well. And he went somewhere where no one else had gone when it comes to all of these things. Because so in his case, what happened is I was interested in finding out, how did we get there? And have we always been this way? Because if you listen to some thinkers who are along the lines of Ubuntu, I am because we are. It's a very famous, African philosophy. It's when some people try to use that to say that Africans are, that we are communist.
Just inherently.
Inherently. Because it's basically, it's African communism. It's African, but that's what they want to tell you. Someone like Julius Nyerere of Tanzania want you to think that.
Is it just like they think it's like a tribal culture thing? It's like going back to the organization of like pre-industrial society? Like what's the argument?
It's more of a fact that, and it actually goes back to, how do I explain this? So it's a philosophy that exists among many African cultures, because we have many different African cultures, but it's one that is kind of more or less prevalent where, when you say I'm a communist in my family, but and then all the way, and then I'm capitalist the way I make money, and then there's somewhere in between.
We don't charge our our kids rent.
Exactly.
We don't write contracts between us inside the family. But then But that's because we have other ways of dealing with that.
Exactly. So some people took a look at that and conflated it with real communism or Marxism, right? That's a big mistake. Does it mean that we don't tend to live like we're very strong in community? Yeah, but I think around the world, people have been strong in community, especially traditional societies, right? But in Africa, George was very good at making that distinction and showing that it has nothing to do with being Marxist or being, communist. So in our case, in Africa, what happened is, I will tell you what happened and how we ended up there. So George, first of all, through his work, he's showing you that pre-colonial Africa, and that's to me the point that matters. We were living our life as Africans. Slavery was going on, but we know it was going on everywhere. And then eventually there was colonialism, right? So for me, the marker should start at colonialism. But for most people, when they think about Africans, in their mind, they think about the few hundred years of slavery before, and then colonialism, and that's it. They don't think that there's a difference between slavery and colonialism simply because slavery was the way of the world. People were trading people, this was another trade. So for me, that I don't put it in the same bucket because even in times of slavery, it turns out many African nations and tribes were practicing free markets, and the enterprise system was working, right? Humans were things to sell, like
truck and barter is natural.
It is horrible, but it was that. So, but people always confuse everything, confuse those two times. So I like to tell people, go to pre-colonial Africa. That's what is of interest to me. Pre-colonial Africa, who were we? What were we doing? Were we these communists that you claim we inherently are? George's work shows we were not. We were not. And that was great to me. But then I think to myself, then what happened?
Yeah.
What happened? How do we go from this to becoming this? So most African nations were getting their independences in the late 50s, early 60s. Ghana is the one who went first in 57. But so George was very good at saying, hey, remember what was going on during that time? Wasn't it the height of ideological battle between two factions, right? On one end, the West,
it's the Cold War. It's the birth of the Cold War.
Exactly. And capitalism being their economic system, facing off of the East, the Cold War, right? This is the time we were in. And now think about this, India Gandhi has, there was this air wave, these vibes of freedom in the air, the biggest colony about to be freed, already freed from the biggest colonizer in the world, Britain. And, Africans were looking at this and, the African liberators, them too being like, galvanized, we're going to get there. And so you had this great battle of influence going on from the Cold War, and they're looking for influence down south, these sovereign nations, I guess. And us, think about it. So you're in this time where all respectable intellectual were Marxist socialists.
Yeah.
Right?
All the universities, all the high IQ people were bought into the slavery ideology, wrapped up with a boil-covered, disgusting person, but still. That's like, right. But it's sharing and caring. And caring, so it's infantile child ideology, mass murder time.
That's right.
I'm not being charitable. It doesn't deserve charity. Hundreds of millions of dead. But
no, it's insane. But I think people need to just go back and be sitting in those shoes, right? So this is what's going on. So all the intellectuals are Marxist socialists.
All of the media.
All of them. The Marxists, traditionally back then, have been the ones who have been fighting for racial equality in times when it was not there. Although Marx was a known racist, but that's a whole other conversation, I guess.
But there's an angle of
always.
One thing that people don't really appreciate if they don't know this history is that in the battles in Europe between fascists and communists, the communists, you can actually see this in the movie Das Boot. There's a Nazi character in that movie. I just remember this because it was so striking. And he's talking to somebody. It's in Germany. It's like a German. I'm vaguely remembering the movie, but I remember this part exactly. I don't know if it was like a U-boat or something in Germany. I forget. But basically, there's a Nazi soldier who's talking to another younger soldier, and he says, "Oh, I used to be a communist. I used to believe in freedom and liberty and all of that." Like that was sort of the way they thought of themselves as global liberators. Like, oh, I'm for freedom, and it just it's incoherent. But like, no, I want us all to be liberated from oppression, from property rights, from reality. Yes, I want utopia. Yes. But they did think they were freedom fighters. Yeah, for sure.
They totally did, and that's the point. They're especially that freedom fighter thing, and always latching themselves onto very real and legit grievances. Yeah. Whether it's coming from women or coming from, minorities based on skin color. Yeah. You name it.
Whatever alphabet you want to, whatever BIPOC thing, whatever you want to do there.
If you're oppressed, the Marxists are
if you're not me, basically.
Yeah, you forget it.
Yeah. I'm Italian, but that's never mind.
Italians,
I'm Roman. We're turbo empire.
Yeah, you got the double whammy there. So, yeah, I would hide who I am. I'm just kidding. So intellectuals, everybody, like you said, media, everybody, academia, everywhere, Marxist socialists. The Marxists of the time have been the one fighting for equal, for racial equality. On top of that, here they are trying to find influence, among people like us.
The Soviet Union.
But remember that people like us, the African liberators, all of the Africans, think about it. Put yourself in their mind. They're they're at the height of a liberation battle for their respective nations, right? And you put yourself in their heart. They'll probably be full of resentment and hate, and who can blame them for all of these things? And they're saying, oh, surely you who colonize us, usually the Westerners, you think we're going to side with you? No way. To hell with you. And so
we're going to go with your enemy, the Soviets.
Exactly. So at that most critical time of our history, in that little section of time, as we were gaining our independences at different years, but again, still within the cluster of years in that period, one by one, the first leaders of these liberated with free nations, the end of colonialism, we are starting out with Marxist socialists of various intensity.
There's a book that I know you're aware of, The Beautiful Tree by James Tooley. He tells a similar story. He's a Brit. He was one of these high IQ academic types, muckety mucks that think they're so great.
Right.
And so, of course, he's a communist, and he goes down to Zimbabwe to work for Robert Mugabe.
Yeah, for Mugabe.
Who's a Marxist.
Yep. That's right. They all are.
So, they all are. They were all communists.
They all are. Even the ones, because then you'll get it sometimes, I'm sure, and some of the people watching us are going to be like, no, Nigeria was not a communist, whatever. I'm like, even Nigeria, they can say they were doing they were not socialist supposedly, but even in Nigeria, they're still doing 5-year, central planning a la Soviet style. I'm like, okay, so I'm sorry, but anyway, so that's in the best case scenario. Do you know that in my country still the state decides on the price of bread? Did you know that?
What could go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong? And so it's just insane. So that's pretty much, John, what happened to us. And the problem is so here we are. What has been imported, like you said, it's this ideology that couldn't be farther away from who we truly were and what we've been practicing before we started being meddled with through colonialism.
If you like this clip, we've got so much more where that came from. So be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you won't miss our new videos as they come out each week.